Welcome, sleepless spirit. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to guide you gently into the shadows of slumber, where dreams take over and worries fade away. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more bedtime tales, whispered just for you. Let me know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it as you listen tonight? And if there's a story you've been longing to hear, something spooky, something comforting, tell me. I'm always listening. Now, tuck yourself in. Let the darkness wrap around you like a warm blanket. It's time to let go and drift into the story. I didn't despise Irene at first. She didn't appeal to me, not at all. However, when my dad introduced us, I detested the number that followed. I was 12 years old, uncomfortable, and still adjusting to my mother's absence. 2 years prior, my mother had unexpectedly died from a brain aneurysm. She was on the couch reading 1 minute, and then she was on the floor. It came as a shock. It was the last one. I was destroyed by it. Tom, my dad, did his best. I'll grant him that. It was a year before he brought anyone home. Then Irene arrived. The first time, she was courteous, made lasagna, wore perfume that smelled of chemicals and citrus, and smiled excessively. Both she and I were making an effort. I gave her thanks for the food, nodded in response to her inquiries, and even chuckled at one of her tales about working as a kindergarten teacher. I'd hoped that we may become friends, but the fractures appeared a few weeks after she moved in. Clutter didn't appeal to her. As a result, my room was free of posters, toys on the floor, and even my mother's framed picture on the dresser. She claimed that looking at a deceased person was depressing. Dad remained silent about that. He only glanced at his plate. At night, she disliked using screens. That meant that every 20 minutes after 8 p.m., she would pass your door to confirm that I wasn't utilizing my phone or tablet. If she had rushed in when she seen the smallest spark beneath the door. She even stole my phone for a week at one point. Because she disliked rudeness, I was disciplined whenever I had a disagreement with her, no matter how small. Screaming matches that made me tremble, locking away my belongings, and silent treatments. She didn't strike me. She didn't. Irene understood how to wear you down, but she was smarter than that. Dad was aware. He always talked about maintaining harmony and finding balance, but I had to give it some time. So I waited, specifically 2 years, and up until that 1 week in October, I believed everything. I came dangerously close to dying in our home that week. My dad had to travel out of state for a 5-day leadership seminar on Monday due to work obligations. He was employed in the field of IT security and had just been elevated to the position of regional director. He had been preparing for the trip since July. I had pleaded with him to let me stay at Marcus, my best buddy. To me, his mother like a second parent. She even wrote a note to say it was okay. Irene, however, refused. She told Dad that in order for us to connect, she and I needed to spend time alone. She spoke in that charmingly false tone she always employed to control him. She even grinned as she gazed at me while placing a claw-like hand on his knee. Dad paused. Kiddo, it will only be a few days. You'll be all right. In front of him, I made an effort not to cry. I swallowed the knot in my throat, grinned, and nodded. She locked the front door and put the keys in her pocket the day he departed, before even waiting for his Uber to pull out of the driveway. I knew then that things would not go well. I simply had no idea how horrible it was. Tuesday. It was a quiet first night. I pretended it wasn't as tense as it was, while I remained in my room and texted Marcus. She prepared the meal. Broccoli in the microwave, dehydrated chicken. I said that I wasn't hungry after just 1 bite. All right, she smiled. She walked away, starving. She never left any food in the kitchen unlocked behind the pantry cabinet, as far as I could tell. A month ago, she had fitted it with a magnetic lock to prevent the deteriorating of munchies. I was smart, she said. I stored some munchies behind my bed. A half-empty box of crackers and granola bars are sufficient. I thought so, anyway. It really got going on Wednesday. Approximately 8:30 p.m. had headphones on and was lying in bed watching a TV on my phone. She rushed in. Go. She yanked the phone out of my hands and snapped. My attempt to reclaim it was unsuccessful. What did I say about screens? Just one episode, please, and I'll be going to bed. She took my phone and charger with her as she left after slapping my hand away. I got up and went down the hall after her. My voice cracked as I said, I need it. She slowly turned around and said, It's mine. You don't own it. It was purchased by your father. It is there for ours. Never again follow me. She closed the door to her bedroom. I heard the lock's key turn. At that point, I discovered that she had also locked the refrigerator and the closet in the corridor. She had shut my door behind me when I turned to return to my room. Click. I gave the handle a try. It remained still. Thursday. I don't recall going to sleep, but I do recall waking up with cramping in my stomach and the loss of perspiration. I have type 1 diabetes, you see, diagnosed at the age of 9. I use glucose sensors and an insulin pump to control it. My father keeps an eye on it, Irene. She didn't care and didn't inquire. I exaggerated, she thought. I looked at my arm. I had a loose sensor. For the backup, I walked to my knitstand. It had vanished. My pump was as well. Panic struck at that point. Irene, I need my pump. Please, I haven't eaten. I'm going low. I yelled as I pounded on the door. Please don't respond. My entire body began to tremble. I was simultaneously heated and chilled, lightheaded. I understood that without insulin or sugar, I might faint, or possibly worse. Again and again, I hammered. I considered scaling the window, but Irene had nailed it shut weeks prior, and we were on the second level. I'm too old to be climbing roofs, they said. I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. Then I heard footsteps. Grasping my pump with one hand, she cautiously opened the door. She calmly remarked, Oh, now you're ready to behave, shouting. I'm not joking. I'll die, please. Next time. Ask nicely. Friday she flung it at me. I didn't really move. It wasn't until dinner that she spoke to me. Then she looked at me and said, You're wrong. I've survived worse than you. If you think your little episode will get your dad to break up with me, you're wrong. I've been buried worse. At the time, I couldn't understand her meaning. However, she had something in her face. It wasn't a show. It was chilly. There was a change. I kept the pump beneath my pillow that night. Saturday. At approximately 9 p.m., the power went off. I initially believed it to be the grid. Then, I caught a glimpse of her entering the basement with a flashlight in hand. She was flipping switches, and I heard it, purposefully. She had turned off the landline and the Wi-Fi as well. She still had my phone. I had lost my backup battery, not able to call for assistance. I was stuck with a woman who detested me in a quiet, helpless home. I was up the entire night. She gave me breakfast on Sunday, the last day. Orange juice, toast, and eggs. She grinned as she stood there, awaiting my consumption. I kept my hands off of it. I inquired, What's within? She didn't flinch. Love, she said. I threw it to the ground. She didn't recoil, just departed the tray onto the carpet before leaving. Dad arrived home on Monday morning. I rushed over to give him a hug that nearly knocked him down. He chuckled uneasily. I turned to face Irene and said, Whoa, buddy, what happened? She folded her arms and smiled charmingly. Her words, everything went perfectly. I wanted to tell him everything and scream the truth, but I refrained because I knew what would follow. She would lie when he asked, and he would believe her. My school counselor discovered the marks on my arm from her yanking me during one of our disagreements 3 weeks later. I lost it. CPS became involved. At first, Dad resisted, but the truth Soon surfaced the threats, the insulin, the malnutrition, the locks. She left without being detained. Since then, we haven't seen her. However, there are still moments when I wake up perspiring and believe I'm back in that room, with the key in her hand just outside the door. My father introduced us to the woman who would permanently alter our lives when I was 13 years old. Lena was her name. Eli, who is only 2 years old, and Ryan, who is 10, are my 2 younger brothers. My name is Maya. In the small Oregon town of Elmgate, we reside in a peaceful area surrounded by trees. In 2019, my mother passed away due to an unidentified aneurysm. She was on the floor 1 minute, and next, she was preparing dinner. Then, everything collapsed. Dad was a ghost for the first year. He made us boxed mac and cheese after returning from work. Then he sat in front of the TV till he fainted. I made an effort to remain composed. Up addition to feeding Eli, changing his diapers, and tucking him up at night, I also assisted Ryan with his homework. While the other parent sank in sadness, I was a child attempting to fill in for the parent we lost. Then Lena arrived. Dad tried out a grief support group and met her there. She said she was there for her sister. I recall her initial visit to the house. She was in the kitchen when I got home from school, tall and well-groomed, dressed in white pants and a navy shirt, as if she had just finished a photo shoot for a lifestyle blog. Her eyes were not nearly touched by the broad, too perfect smile she was wearing. Right away, I realized that I didn't like her. She didn't like me either, I promise. Initially, it was small things, like passive-aggressive remarks. She would comment on my hair when Dad wasn't around. Have you ever considered brushing that? She would often remark things like, girls your age shouldn't be so bossy. My dad didn't notice when I reminded Ryan to put his dishes in the sink. He regarded her as though she were hanging the moon. She prepared meals for us. His father's jokes made her laugh. On Instagram, she shared photographs she took with Eli along with hashtags like #bonus mom. Dad loved it. She was staying most nights within 3 months. Her toothbrush had a designated place in the bathroom than 6 months. Dad sat us down one evening and announced that Lena would be moving in. He anticipated our excitement. No, I wasn't. Ryan wasn't either, but we both nodded. As soon as she moved there, things began to go strange. I left school early one afternoon to attend a half-day parent-teacher conferences. Dad had not left his job. Lena was meant to be keeping an eye on Eli. Eli's tiny ramblings and the typical cartoons were not audible when I stepped in silently. There was silence in the house. After putting my backpack down, I went upstairs to see how he was doing. I saw the door to Dad's room was ajar as I passed it. Lena was standing inside at his locked dresser, which held a tiny metal safe and vital documents. She was speaking to herself while holding a slip of paper. I went cold. She must have turned around and grinned broadly as she heard the floorboard creak. Too big. Oh, hello Maya, she said in a kind tone. Just looking for some extra blankets. Your dad said they might be in here. That was a lie. The blankets were in the linen closet. Everyone was aware of that. I didn't answer. I simply turned and made my way to Eli's room. Heart palpitations. His cheeks were crimson as he slept in his cot. Lena, still grinning, entered after me. She giggled and said, "You scared me. Thought I was home alone." That evening, I informed Dad what I had seen and said, "Want a snack?" He laughed. Most likely, she simply forgot. Don't always act suspiciously. A few days later, Lena emerged from Ryan's room as I was making my way upstairs. She hurriedly closed the door behind her. I said, "What were you doing in there?" She didn't recoil. I went into Ryan's room after she left. "Oh, just opening a window. It's stuffy up here, don't you think?" They had both windows closed. It didn't smell at all like the room had been aired out. I repeated it to Dad. He simply let out a sigh. I understand that it's difficult to adjust, but would you just try for me? Try to solve this as if it were my responsibility. Everything was different 2 nights ago. Ryan, Dad, and I went to a school function. Lena and Eli remained at home. I informed Dad that I was going to the library to return a book, but we arrived home at around 9 o'clock. I didn't. I went back and I slipped through the garage without a word. I simply trusted my instincts. I could hear Eli wailing from the hallway, not your typical wail, a cry of terror, something that makes your stomach turn. Lena was shouting, "Shut up, shut the hell up," over that. She was standing over Eli's high chair in the living room as I dashed in, her face contorted in anger and her fists clenched. She jumped like I had electrified her when she saw me. "Maya, I didn't see you there. He's just fussy. I'm get away from him," I yelled. She remained silent. She turned and left of the space. Eli sobbed and clung to me as I picked him up, holding him until Dad got home. I told him everything. This time, he didn't dismiss it. He appeared astonished. They quarreled behind closed doors that evening. Shouting was heard, followed by silence. I woke up at around 2:30 a.m. that night with the notion perhaps he was beginning to see what I saw. There was a strange feeling. I swore on my life as soon as I opened my eyes. Someone was standing outside my door, I noticed. A feminine figure was still observing me. I sat up straight. Pulling the door closed, the figure turned and walked away. I hurriedly got out of bed and flung the door wide. I noticed my dad's bedroom door just closing, but the corridor was deserted. I didn't think twice. I rushed into the space. Lena was in bed with Dad. I roused Dad. I had her in my room. Dazed, Lena sat up. I yelled, "What?" I was sleeping. "I saw you." Dad only glanced between us, dazed and perplexed. "You were dreaming." "Maya, it's late. Return to your bed." Lena had a blank expression, for the first time. Just icy eyes observing me, without a grin or phony charm. I retreated from the space. I spent the remainder of the night awake. My door was now always locked. I shifted a chair beneath its handle. Even if it appeared paranoid, I didn't care. There was a reason I was paranoid. Dad informed me the following day that Lena would be spending some time with her sister. I made no inquiries. Perhaps he was beginning to awaken, but Ryan was scared and pale when he came to me that night. She entered my room. When I was awake last night, he whispered. She muttered something while standing next to my bed. She just kept grinning, but I'm not sure what she said. I felt like puking. The following morning, I discovered a tiny notebook in her drawer, concealed beneath her sweaters. It included only pages of scrawls, with one line repeated repeatedly. "She's the one obstructing the path. She's the one obstructing the path. She's the one obstructing the path." It was occasionally written neatly. It was the same line over and over again, but occasionally it was frantic and frenetic. I snapped photos. I showed my father. His face turned white. He simply nodded and assured me that he would take care of it without saying anything further. That evening, she departed. The bags are packed. No farewell. I wish I could say it ended there. However, I occasionally hear something when Eli's room's baby monitor crackles late at night. A giggle, a whisper, a voice similar to hers. Cold and soft. Every time, I make sure no one ever shows up there. I know what I saw, but I'm not sure if she's still keeping an eye on us. And her smile is something I will always remember. I never imagined that there would be so many negative aspects to marriage. David was kind, quiet, and smart when I first met him. He wasn't the kind to immediately jump into conversations. Instead, he approached them with caution. I hadn't experienced his kindness in years. I ran across him at a gallery in New York while I was getting over a protracted, exhausting relationship. Portland's opening. It felt like entering a peaceful area following a storm. Early on, he informed me that he had a daughter named Clara, and I was honest. I believed I could love someone else's time, but I never wanted children of my own. Before getting married, we dated for more than a year. I also made an effort. Actually, I tried with Clara, but there was always a problem. She hardly gave me a glance even before the wedding. When she did, it didn't feel bashful. It felt calculated. Her eyes never met her smile. I assumed that was just the uneasiness of adolescence. 4 years prior, she had lost her mother in an accident, and sadness at that age causes things to go awry. However, 6 months after the marriage, I began to question whether Clara's quiet was due to grief or there was more going on. Our new home was located in a peaceful Pinebrook, Oregon, suburb. Early in the morning, deer would occasionally cross the yard, and the streets were lined with pine trees. Idyllic and dishonest. Clara ignored me at first. No hellos, no good mornings. After that, it turned passive-aggressive. When I walked by, she slammed her door. During a work call, I turned up the TV. When I tried to cook something new, they laughed. They may be little, but they add up. Then, everything got out of hand. Our bedroom's white duvet had black ink spilled over it one day. It appeared to be a hideous Rorschach test. My fave painted beige heels green. The charger for my phone kept going missing. I spilled my perfume in the toilet. She was always treated gently by David. She's just adjusting, he would say while massaging my hips. Give it time. You're the first woman she's known since her mother died. So it's not easy for her. I wanted to think he was real. I cherished him. However, as Clara began to push boundaries I was unaware of, love was no longer sufficient. When David had to travel to San Diego for 3 days for work, things became worse. When we dropped him off at the airport, I recall her grin. Her eyes were vacant, yet her lips curled. She waved too slowly and for too long. I saw her wearing a necklace my late grandma had given me that night, a tiny, fragile locket. As if she owned the mirror, she stood in front of it and ran her fingers over it carefully. You didn't ask, I managed to say, while maintaining my composure. She gave a shrug. I don't need to inquire. I own part of this house. The number. That isn't the point. Respect is at issue. Her fingers clutching the locket, she turned to face me. She remarked in a hushed voice, "You're not my mother. I'm not attempting to be, either. But I'm in charge, Clara, while your dad is away, for much too long." She gazed at me. She then pulled the necklace till it broke without averting her gaze. I also lost it. I grabbed her phone, screaming. She raced to her room. She slammed the door so forcefully that the picture frames in the hallway shook. I gave David a call. He spoke in a strained voice. He was obviously unhappy, but he supported me. She cannot continue in this manner. Hold on to the phone till I return. I was oddly proud of myself that night. I believed I had finally established a limit. However, I then made a mistake. I picked up the phone. I wasn't spying, out of habit. I had grabbed it, believing it to be mine. The cases were the same. To locate a photo I had taken earlier, I went to the gallery. Instead, I discovered that I was asleep. At least 30 hazy pictures from several evenings were included. Some came from the side of the bed, while others were taken from the room's corner. One came from right overhead, as if she had scaled something to hover over me. I was ill. As I scrolled, my hands shook. The timestamps were consistently in the range of 2 a.m. and 3 in the morning. A few of many of the pictures showed me with my mouth open, my neck uncovered, and I was completely unconscious. But there were also pictures of David dozing on his side. The final image was captured from beneath the bed. Bile rose in my throat as I gazed at the television. Why did she intend to post them online and disgrace me? Was it anything darker, though? That night, for the first time since I moved in, I shut the door to my bedroom. Clara pretended nothing had happened the following morning. occurred after breakfast. She even thanked me and inquired if I needed assistance with laundry. I felt uneasy about it. Despite being shaken, I made the decision to attempt rewarding excellent conduct. I returned the phone. To 37 a.m. I heard a noise when I woke up. Click, a faint metallic sound. Then, a clatter. The door exploded. With her phone in hand, Clara stood there. Her pale face gleamed in the dim blue light. "Hurry up." She snapped a photo. I shot to my feet. "Why on earth are you doing this?" She didn't respond. She took off running. With my pulse racing, I ran after her. "Stop. Clara, why are you photographing me?" Her eyes were big, but not as she turned slowly and deliberately, terrified. She murmured softly, "Because he didn't trust me." "Who didn't think you were real?" "My father." I went cold. "What do you believe?" She extended the phone. She said, "You never looked." She returned her attention to a picture. One of me dozing off. In the photo, she gestured toward the ceiling. "Increase the brightness?" "Yes, I did." It made my skin crawl. Forms, long, thin forms crossways over the bed. Like arms, almost, like a spider clinging to the ceiling. Dozens of them are present. One more picture. Identical forms. One arm was extended lower near my neck, but only this time. Closer. Another picture. My face was inches away from the shape. A long, warped human eye. Clara muttered. "I saw it once. I kept seeing it at night, but I assumed I was just dreaming." "Above you. It dangles from the ceiling." I told Dad it was just you. However, he said that I required therapy and that I was just dreaming. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Clara, you despise me," she stated bluntly. "I'm lying, you'd suppose." She gave the phone to me. "Only when you're asleep does it appear." My desire was to deny it. Let's say it was a filter, a trick of the light, or whatever. However, I had also witnessed it. A dark form. The room seemed too heavy when I woke up twice already. I saw something scamper across the ceiling after I swore. Since shadows aren't able to breathe, I assumed it was a shadow. I had trouble sleeping that night. Too scared to sleep alone, Clara slept on the couch. All of the lights were left on. 3:08 a.m. Above the bed, I heard a scratching sound that sounded like nails on wood. I remained motionless. Next, I heard the shutter of the camera. From the entryway, Clara held up her phone. Her face turned white. Silently, "Don't move," she said. She showed me the screen and said, I didn't. The ceiling over my bed appeared ripped, as if someone had peeled aside a flap of plasterboard, leaving a black space in the wood, and a face my own, but incorrect emerging from it. Two big eyes, too big mouth, and too smooth skin. It wasn't a person. I was tired of it. I passed out. David returned home the following morning. I showed him the pictures. He wouldn't look. Isabel, I'm not sure what you're attempting to prove. She's a kid. The grown-up is you. This must end. It was unbelievable to me. Do you believe I'm lying? Why would I? All he did was shake his head. For months, there's been tension in this house. You may not be prepared for all of this. Fear was not as heavy as the weight of betrayal when I glanced at him. That evening, I prepared a bag. Clara trailed me to the entrance. Her words were, I'm sorry. I looked over at her. Was it always there, Clara? She remained silent till I arrived, then said, No, what changed? Her eyes glowed. It pursued you. I relocated to a city rental apartment. I abandoned David, the house, and the necklace. However, since I've started waking up at 3 in the morning, I'm not afraid. Additionally, when I turned on my phone last night, a brand new picture of me sleeping from above with my face looking down while still grinning was in the gallery. I never imagined that relocating would feel like a warning. You anticipate some difficult situations while blending families, patches and modifications. However, the experiences I had with my new stepdaughter during those 3 months weren't typical. It wasn't merely a phase, pain, or stubbornness. Something resided within her, within that house. I'll begin at the beginning. I'm a 34-year-old freelance web designer named Oisha Mainorn. I wed a civil servant named Samir, engineer half a year ago. We first met in Pune while working on a road project. Kind and composed, he was the type of man who truly listened to you. I was drawn to him because of his calmness and tenderness. His daughter from a previous marriage, Tara, came next. She was 8 years old. It wasn't until we were engaged that we finally met. She needed time, Samir had urged. He was hesitant to introduce anyone new because her mother had died suddenly the previous year. However, I recall thinking she looked like a porcelain picture when I eventually met her, with large, sad eyes and coal black hair. She was quiet, courteous, and even sweet, perhaps too quiet. I thought that silence was shyness. I know better now. We relocated to a home situated close to the forested hills on the outskirts of Lonavala. Samir came up with the idea, a tranquil setting for Tara. He had described the house's twisting staircases, antique teak doors, and towering ceilings as delightful. I must say that I adored it. We had an uneventful first few weeks together. Tara would get up, eat, go to her online classes, and then spend hours sneaking away in her room. She never played outside or watched TV. Dolls were her only obsession. She had dozens of them crammed into her room's corners, sitting on the window sill, and even hanging from the ceiling on strings like a botched art piece. I discovered an antique wooden trunk in the attic one evening while unpacking. My curiosity overcame me. When I forced it open, I discovered a dozen old dolls that were damaged, dusty, and some missing limbs. To be honest, it made me uneasy. However, Tara's face brightened in a way I had never seen her do before when she saw them. "These were mine," she said in a low voice. Samir believed it to be innocuous, so I didn't disagree. He would say, "She's been through so much, safe." If these provide her a sense of security, I didn't feel secure. The initial occurrence was minor. One morning, I was alone myself in the house, Tara at school, Samir at work. I heard a faraway, childlike humming as I was completing dishes. I initially believed it was coming from outside, but it was coming from upstairs. I stopped. I yelled out. Perhaps Tara was home early. Quiet. I went upstairs and found her room unoccupied. However, those damned dolls had moved. I had no doubt about it. They weren't gathered near the window for a longer time. On the floor, they were gathered in a circle around a tea set that had not been there the previous day. Nevertheless, I reasoned that perhaps she had simply organized them that way before. Uncomfortable, I shut the door. Tara started acting differently. She began observing me with a colder expression, as if she were waiting for something, rather than with love or interest. She started mumbling things to her dolls that I couldn't hear over the door. I once heard a phrase as I passed by. "She isn't yet prepared." I went cold. I asked her casually who she was speaking to later at dinner. She chewed slowly and whispered, "My real mommy. The walls are her home." Samir dismissed it with a giggle. She refers to her recollections. She didn't mean that, though. When I was changing her bedding a week later, I discovered something beneath her pillow. A sketch. 3 stick figures were displayed. Obviously, Tara was one. Samir was one. The eyes of the third were covered in X's. The head is surrounded by red crayon. There was only one word underneath it. Aisha. I softly confronted her. "Tara, did you sketch this, my love?" She grinned as she glanced at me. "She instructed me to. Who was it? The person who puts on your face." My nightmares started. In my mind, I would picture myself moving through the house. It wasn't me, though. The image was a distorted, smiling me. Hollowed eyes and patched skin. It would be situated at Tarara's bed's foot. As she murmured, "Make her go away," I began to lock our bedroom door at night while brushing her hair. Samir saw that I was upset, but he was overburdened with remorse and work. "You're only getting used to it. Tara is doing a lot of processing. It will improve." It didn't. I discovered a doll I had never seen before one afternoon while tidying Tarara's room. It resembled me in small. Its face was half melted and burned, but its clothes and hair were the same. Its hands were either blood or paint red. I awoke that night to scratching from within the walls, not from the outside, like little hands scraping nails on plaster. It was quiet at first, then louder. I gave Samir a wake-up call. "Hear that?" He sat up feeling sleepy. "What can you hear?" The sound ceased as soon as he spoke. I began recording everything. The voices, the dolls, the drawings, and the moving furniture. Samir got annoyed. "I believe you're not feeling well, Aisha. Do you believe that I'm making this up? I believe you're overburdened." She seems possessed to me. I had never spoken it out loud before, and I was aware of the sound. Tara, however, was more than a girl in mourning. She was being used, fed off, and inhabited by something. He slept on the couch that night. Samir departed for a 3-day site inspection in Nashik 2 nights later. I pleaded with him not to leave. He gave me a forehead kiss. "She's only a kid. She wasn't a number." Without him, the home was disturbingly quiet. I prepared dinner. Contacted Tara. No response. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor upstairs when I found her. One doll was in her lap, while the others were grouped around her. The doll who resembled me. Dinner. Tara. She remained still. Tara. Slowly she turned her head. She had black eyes. Not like black eyes in a metaphor. Black, literally. Full and glossy. Similar to ink. She muttered, "I'm almost ready. Simply require the remainder of your face." I took off running, with my heart pounding. I shut myself in the bedroom. I gave Samir a call. No signal. After flickering, the lights turned out. I was crying as I stood in complete darkness, holding the door closed. Then an innocent software voice. "It's tea time, Mommy." It emerged from beneath the door. I let out a yell. The wood started to be scraped. Slow, deliberate, and word carving. I turned the flashlight on. The wood was engraved with the word STAY. Then came the burning scent. Flesh and hair. I went into the closet. My entire wardrobe was gone, rather. A number of doll limbs were sewn together and hung from coat hangers. I woke up to silence at daybreak, but I don't recall falling asleep. Peeking between the drapes was sunlight. They were chirping birds. Was everything a hallucination? I approached Tara's room with caution. The blankets were drawn up to her chin as she sat in bed. There were no more dolls. Whispering, "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" She was using me. "But she likes you now." Tara grinned as she looked up. My reflection flickered, and the mirror behind her started to swirl like water. However, I hadn't. 3 weeks have passed since then. When Samir returned, the house was silent. Tara was happy. I was at ease. Everything was cleaned. No more illustrations. No more dolls. I assured him I was all right. Rest was just what was required. I was believed by him. However, I am aware of the reality. Sometimes I look in the mirror at myself. My reflection moves, but I don't, and occasionally, at night, when I shut my eyes, I hear that adorable little voice whisper, "It's tea time, Mommy." I respond, "I know." At first, I thought I was among the fortunate ones. I'm Isaac Walker, and I was raised in Maple Hollow, a peaceful suburb south of Eugene, Oregon. It's one of those places where everyone knows your name. The streets are lined with maple trees, and nothing bad seems to happen until it does. My entire life changed when I was 10 years old. That year, my parents had a lot of arguments. After losing her job, my mom, Laura, began drinking, and my dad, Daniel Walker was attempting to maintain his composure. The bills, me, and his job. It wasn't functioning. The yelling persisted, and the subsequent quiet was even awful. Then my mother simply departed one morning. That day, she was meant to drive me to school. I recall wearing my bag while I waited by the front entrance. I went to her room when she didn't come down and discovered the closet door open. She had lost her garments. There was nothing in the drawers. After a week without any calls or texts, my dad informed me she had gone to get some fresh air, but it was evident she was gone. Months passed while I continued to wait for her. She was never located, just gone. No goodbyes, no body. Dad made his own mistakes. He plunged into his job. Double shifts, late shifts, anything to avoid being at home for an extended period. I was just the silent kid at school, with a dad who spoke only in exhausted tones, and the ghost of a mother. Then Rebecca arrived. She was presented as a hospital friend. According to Dad, she was a nurse who had assisted him in recovering from a back ailment, tall, with copper blonde hair and lovely green eyes. She was in her early 30s. She was elegant in every way. She had a lavender scent, wore cozy sweaters, and spoke to you as if you were the only person in the room. She had first just dropped in for dinner. She then spent the night there. Then she moved in one day. It didn't bother me, to be honest. I felt lonely. Rebecca was flawless as well. She restored the scent of freshly baked cookies to the house. She made notes in my lunchbox. She spent the entire night with me when I was ill. She even hung my drawings on the refrigerator after framing them. For the first time since the disappearance of my biological mother, I began calling her mother without even recognizing it. We were a family again, I thought. I wish it had remained that way. When I was almost 15, I noticed the first indication that something wasn't right. Small headaches were the first symptom, followed by lightheadedness. I would feel as though I hadn't slept at all when I woke up. My muscles were aching all the time, and I was losing weight. My doctor performed tests, but the results were inconclusive. He attributed it to either stress or even a virus. At the moment, Rebecca was incredibly compassionate. She sat at my bedside every night with vitamins and warm tea. She smiled and replied, "Just a phase. You'll quickly regain your strength." However, she became more domineering as I deteriorated. Unless she prepared it, she wouldn't let me eat anything. She began feeding me greenish, bitter smoothies every morning, which she claimed were detox blends. They would aid in the removal of the illness, she explained. Next came the needles. She brought her leather medical pack, which I had seen her bring from the hospital, into my room one night as I was lying in bed. She smiled and continued, "I've got something that'll help you feel better." She produced a syringe that contained a light blue fluid. My heart skipped a beat. "What is that?" "A tiny bit of tonic. I used to provide it to patients in the intensive care unit. Consider it similar to a vitamin injection." I felt cold when she said it, for some reason. Then, with a sense of pride, and as though it were a gift, she said, "You're an angel, Isaac, and I want to make sure you don't hurt anymore." I immediately felt nervous and sat up. "I don't believe I require that. Really, I'm all right." After a brief pause in her smile, she slowly nodded. "All you're feeling is fear. I get it." She took a step forward. I turned my head away. "I really don't want it. Number." Then her voice changed for the first time since I'd known her. It was stiffer and colder. "This is necessary for you. Believe me." She then took hold of my arm. I sprang out of bed and backed toward the door after yanking away. But she was quicker than I anticipated. With the syringe in front of her, like a knife, she barred the exit. "If you continue to fight it, Isaac, you will not be able to enter paradise." I let out a yell. My life was saved by that scream. My father rushed up the steps. Rebecca came toward me, syringe still in hand, and he rushed through the door. After pushing her away, He took hold of my arm and dragged me along with him. I will never forget what Rebecca yelled, "And it's time for you to go." The syringe was then pushed against his throat by her. He just managed to block it. His skin was scratched by the needle, but it did not penetrate. Until the police arrived, he pinned her to the ground after wrestling her there. A haze of flashing lights, interviews, and paramedic silent stares ensued. Rebecca was immediately taken into custody. Later, the toxicology analysis revealed that the injection she attempted to administer to us contained thopentol, a medication that can result in respiratory failure when taken in excess. The house was searched by detectives. They discovered deadly thallium that had been slipping into my food for weeks in her locked cupboard. I was becoming weaker as a result. That's why did I feel like I was slowly losing my life. She had been gradually poisoning me, it turns out, and I would have passed away in my sleep if I had taken that shot. She then received a diagnosis of severe depression and schizoaffective disorder. That wasn't all, though. Something that disturbs me was exposed in her notebooks in court. The idea of purity and letting go had been her obsession. The people she cared about from suffering. Death, to her, was a gift of tranquility. The worst aspect is that she never thought her actions were wrong. The house felt empty once more after her arrest. With time, I recovered. At least physically. I still have mental health issues. I suffer from panic attacks, trust concerns, and every time I smell lavender, I jump. My father never had self-forgiveness. He hasn't mentioned her since. I repeatedly asked myself the same question. Why? Why would someone so lovely and nice try to murder me? To be honest, I'm still unsure. The final thing she did before being taken away in handcuffs is all I can recall. With her warm, gentle grin, she turned to face me and began humming a lullaby, the same one she used to sing to me when I was ill. My mother left when I was just 12 years old. Not even a last look at me. No letter. No warning, just gone. Dad made an effort to justify it, said that occasionally people break, and that she had been unhappy for some time. But I knew that wasn't the case. At night, I could hear the yelling. In the restroom, I could hear her sobbing. And I noticed how he treated her when he believed I wasn't looking, as if she were a burden or a loose thread that needed to be cut. He had a new girlfriend by the time I was 15. Denise was her name. Denise was at least 10 years younger than my mother, blonde and attractive in the sense that Instagram teaches people how to look attractive. At least while he was around, she spoke softly and wore a nurse's costume. She moved in 3 months later. I was once referred to be my father's bright girl, used to stay up late with me to watch science fiction films and assist me with schoolwork. However, I became inconvenient after Denise entered the picture, as if I brought to mind a history he was attempting to forget. He changed. Someone more subdued. Someone who acknowledged Denise's statement that I was misbehaving. Even though I had remained silent, it no longer felt like home in the house. Denise, too. As soon as the front door clicked behind my dad in the mornings, Denise began to exhibit her true self. "Ellie, I'm not your mother." While cleaning the counter that didn't require cleaning, she would lose her temper. "Therefore, don't treat me as though I owe you anything." I didn't. She once growled as she used the heel of her boot to pin my favorite shirt to the laundry room floor, attempting to turn your father against me with your small gesture of sympathy. "I know what you're trying to do." She made me wipe up with paper, towels and sprayed bleach close to my face, which made my eyes sting when I had the sick and puked in the corridor on my way to the restroom. A weak, repulsive youngster is the last thing anyone wants in their home. She remembered that word. Horrible. She made frequent use of it. Worst of all, my dad didn't notice it or feigned not to. I went up to him one evening. "Dad, she treats me badly. She says terrible stuff." He regarded me as though I had accused the son of being dishonest. "Denise supports us by working 12-hour shifts. You ought to feel thankful." Perhaps if you weren't so aloof. I realized that night that I was really alone. I was gone at the age of 18. Within 3 days of graduating, I joined the army. It was freedom, but basic training was misery. I endured deployments, sandstorms, blistering hands, and restless nights in order to experience something that neither my father's quiet nor Denise's perfume offered. Then came college, then a little, quiet wedding. Marcus, my spouse, is good-natured. The very first man to listen to me without attempting to change who I was. In Pennsylvania, we purchased property close to the edge of a town that was in decline. No one was interested in the old farmland anymore. An old, dilapidated home that was partially covered in ivy stood on the back half of the land. Tearing it down was always the idea. After I departed, I never saw my father again. He didn't give a call, nor after I graduated, nor after I married. Not even when my name appeared in the local newspaper after I won an engineering prize. I simply shook my head when Marcus inquired, "Do you ever want to reach out to him?" He decided. The last time I saw her was 2 months ago. To get my mind straight, I had driven 2 hours to a bigger mall. I didn't want to spend time on the property thinking by myself while Marcus was visiting his parents. When she was married to my dad, she wouldn't have entered the exclusive lingerie store Bella's where I saw her. Denise, however, was still holding on to that fake beauty at the age of 50. She had a phone stuck to her palm, tight jeans, and raised eyebrows. She didn't know who I was. Naturally, she didn't. I was a different person now, broader shoulders, short black hair, assured stance, and little sign of the frail kid she tormented. "Pardon me," I replied as I moved to stand next to her. "I can give you a lift if you're going to the east side parking garage. Do you know if it's still open?" She blinked, gave me a tight smile, and said, "Yeah, that would be nice." Without asking or thinking, she got into my car and drove to the old house. She didn't feel the sting of the injection until we got to the edge of our property, and as soon as she slumped, I knew I had one chance to fix it. I kept her sedated until she was fastened to the old row-iron bed I'd bolted to the floor, and when she woke up, I saw her eyes flicker with uncertainty, then dread. Before she could scream, no one drove down our dirt road, and no one would hear her concerning money, because if you let me go, no, I answered coolly as I set a dining bowl on her lap. It's about the truth. She resisted the first week, trying to kick, twist, and bite, and screaming until her voice broke. However, I kept her alive, clean, and fed. That was a component of the penalty. I said, "No one's coming," on one of our long, quiet evenings. Her face somewhat cracked as she said, "My father passed away 2 months ago due to a heart attack. He loved me." "No," I leaned in and murmured, "He put up with you." I gave her mashed potatoes saturated in salt, fat, and syrup. I occasionally allow her to fast for a day in order to ensure her pride was broken by her hunger. It was successful. She ceased to spit in the bowls. I also helped disseminate the rumors. I posted on social media and made burner accounts. Tom was dumped by Denise for a younger man, took his money and fled. I made flyers and displayed them in public. I made her invisible by posting a picture of her on town boards that read, "Have you seen this woman? Heartbreaker, gold digger, liar." Before I buried her body, I buried her reputation. And Denise evolved over the months. The forced eating caused her to gain weight. Her once luminous skin went grey. The fire in her eyes went out. The same lips that used to hurl hate at me was now mumbling incoherently to the ceiling. She occasionally sobbed at night. She occasionally pleaded for a person named Tom. I could tell she was beginning to lose it at that point. I wasn't finished, though. I brought the mirror 3 months in. I placed it next to her bed on the wall at an angle that would allow her to view what she had changed into. She let out a whine. I held out the dish and warned, "Eat, or I'll make it worse. The last indication was when she obeyed. That evening, I sat next to her and carefully combed her matted hair and muttered, "You're deformed." The same thing Mother used to say to me when I was 12 and too scared to face the mirror. "I knew your mother was weak," she rasped, her swollen face twitching as she stared at me, really looked at me, and then something clicked behind her eyes. It was recognition. I grinned. "And now you'll understand what weakness feels like." When I put the belt around her neck, she didn't scream. I then covered her body with industrial chemicals, wrapped the remains in thick plastic bags, and buried them under rotting floorboards. 2 days later, the backhoe arrived. "The whole place is collapsing," the driver said. "You're doing the right thing," I nodded, agreeing that it's time to put the past behind us. I never told Marcus the whole story, just that the old house had been unsafe and I needed it gone for peace of mind. There, we built a garden with bright flowers, stones with quiet etchings, and occasionally I walked barefoot in the mornings, letting the dew collect between my toes. The building fell apart, leaving behind walls, dust, wood, and bones. Everything was taken to the landfill, exactly where it belonged. Because monsters don't go away when you run, you have to become the reckoning they didn't anticipate. I don't feel guilty. I feel clean because I remember the first time I saw her, not in a dramatic way, with thunder crashing behind her like in a movie, but in a Target parking lot in rural Tennessee in the middle of the afternoon, a little humid. I had no idea that this woman would move into my house, change my life, and become the source of every nightmare I still have today. Let me go back in time. I was waiting in the car with the window cracked while my dad came out with paper towels and allergy medication, and there she was, wearing a floral dress that looked like something from a catalogue from decades ago, too bright for that cloudy day. She was tall, blonde, and so still that she might have been posing for something. My dad, Graham, had changed. He no longer laughed, ate little, and hardly looked at me. I can't blame him. We were all grieving in our own ways. My name is Eli Parker, and I was 17 when it all happened. My mom had passed away from ovarian cancer 2 years prior. However, the silence in our home became heavy, creeping, and unsaid like black slime. Suddenly, one morning, he announced, "This weekend, we're going to Knoxville, getting to know someone." Anna ended up becoming that someone. He first kept the location of their meeting a secret. I later learned that he had been on a strange dating site for ladies from Eastern Europe looking for husbands in the United States. It sounded like something from a documentary about scams. She was real, though, very authentic, extremely intense. Anya settled in quite quickly. Her clothing were in her mother's old closet in 2 weeks. The kitchen cabinet held her coffee mugs. Her scent permeated every space. She rarely smiled, but when she did, it was never enough to her gaze. She spoke halting but useful English and was Romanian. She was only 11 years older than me, and she was approximately 28. Although she wasn't particularly nasty to me at first, there was something strange about the way she regarded me, as if I were a barrier in a game whose conclusion she had already prearranged. The house also began to change. Dad's enthusiasm immediately increased. He played old records and resumed cooking. One night, I even saw him dancing with her in the kitchen. I wished I could be pleased for him. Yes, I did. Then the regulations began. Talking after 9 p.m. is prohibited. Don't open your door, always. Nobody's coming over without permission. The permission Anna never granted. Dad didn't appear to know. Or perhaps he simply didn't give a damn. He was too preoccupied with acting like we were a contented family. My bedroom door was shut the night I returned home from my part-time work at the movie theater. From within, slowly, as if shocked, she opened it, then said she was only looking for spiders. I still had a toasty laptop, but there were none. Little things began to catch my attention. Emails marked as opened were ones I hadn't yet read. I reorganized my closet. At 2 a.m., I once discovered her in the garage, standing close to the deep freezer. The lights are off, no justification. When she saw me, she grinned. Snow is just missing, similar to home. I informed my father. He chuckled. Son, she's strange. Give her some time. Grief can mess with people in strange ways, you know. This was not grief, however. This was in charge. I attempted to phone the sister of my aunt's mother, but the number abruptly stopped working. Anya stated I could have dialed the wrong number. When I questioned her about it, I discovered that my phone's call history had been erased 2 days later. Then the bruise appeared. One Monday morning, it appeared beneath her eye. I heard the whispering on the phone the previous evening, but she claimed to have slipped in the toilet while wearing sunglasses during breakfast. Her language was Romanian. I captured some of it on a recording using a translation tool. Phrases like Parker boy, follow, menace, and spouse doesn't know. It hit like freezing water in the end. I went up to her and inquired whether she was in danger. A few weeks went by before she finally stated, "You should not listen to what is not meant for you. It's very dangerous." Around 1 a.m. one night, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I took a quick look. Dad wasn't there. Anna had one of Mom's old scarves in her hand. She entered the guest room, sat on the bed's edge, and gazed at the wall while stroking the fabric. I spent 5 minutes standing there. She didn't blink. I began sleeping with a chair blocking the door to my bedroom. After a while, I attempted utilizing Wi-Fi as any other teen would. I looked through immigration forums, Reddit discussions, deep forums, and more. Anna wasn't, as it turned out, not at all. Anna Maria Dobe was her name. She had already been married twice. Within a year of the marriage, both husbands had passed away, one in a strange Oregon hunting mishap. In New Jersey, the other fell from a balcony. Rumors, but no suspicions or convictions. I took this to my father. I love her, Eli. She's had a difficult life. She needs this chance. No, we needed a chance. A chance to survive, he said, slamming the laptop close. On a wet Thursday, the final straw occurred when I woke up late and discovered Anna seated at the dining table, staring out the window, without looking at me, saying, "You dream loudly. School had been cancelled due to bad weather." What? While you're asleep, you yell your mother's name. That night, I pretended to sleep and watched as she silently entered my room at 3:12 a.m. She remained next to my bed for almost 5 minutes as I kept my breathing steady, whispering something in my ear. "You miss her very much." I went to the police, but I had nothing solid, no bruises, no recordings, nothing that shouted danger. Just instinct and fear, and they told me to stay safe and document everything. So I started taking pictures, videos, audio recordings, and password-protected drives. One morning, I left for school early and turned around. Romanian was too soft to catch, so I left after that. I discovered a little piece of paper beneath my mattress that said, "He trusts me more," after I caught her searching through my drawers. "You'll be leaving shortly." The climax occurred the night I discovered the crawl area, which is behind the laundry room and is never used, open. I was doing laundry late when I noticed the loose panel revealed a shoebox filled with Polaroids, pictures of me sleeping, brushing my teeth, driving, and one with my window open, obviously taken from outside. At the bottom was a picture of my mother, and the final one showed her grave. I ran, grabbed everything I owned, got into my car, and drove while staying with my friend Mark's family. Told them just enough of the truth to make them wary. And 3 days later, Dad called in tears to report that Anya had vanished. He left a message that read, "I went where I am because I was not wanted. Police never discovered Anna, but they did find her luggage buried in our backyard, along with my mom's old notebooks, her wedding ring, and her hair. Yes, real hair. Nothing. I'm 22 years old, studying psychology and trauma therapy. and I've been locking my bedroom door at night for 5 years. I also check crawl spaces and occasionally, but infrequently, I see flashes of white floral dresses in crowds. They say that trauma leaves scars, but some scars don't stay on skin. Instead, they live inside the walls of your memory, watching, waiting. My father, who didn't initially name her his girlfriend, presented me to the lady who would wreck everything when I was 13 years old. This is Madison, she's a friend. That was a lie, albeit a kind one that might have been intended to lessen the impact. Mom had only been gone for 7 months when she passed away from Anne. She fought hard until the last of weeks when she was unable to speak. I remember her squeezing my hand as the hospice nurse cleaned the morphine for. She used to be vibrant, full of sarcastic comebacks, always humming while cooking. She had aggressive cancer that quickly drained her of her energy, and I hardly remember her as anything other than exhausted. She blinked slowly as if she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Her name was never spoken again after the funeral, and it was as if my mother had never been here. When Madison first came into our lives, I tried to be polite, because that's what Mom would have wanted. She passed away on a Sunday morning in the house we still lived in, and her scent lingered on the pillowcase until my dad finally washed it one night without telling me. I will never forgive him for that. I pretended to like cheap jewelry, iced coffee, those frosted cookies from the bakery near the park, bribes. Madison was younger than my mom, but not by much, and she wore pricey perfume that made me get headaches. She also laughed loudly at my dad's jokes. When Madison moved in the summer before high school started, I noticed that Dad softened around her. He started shaving every morning again, making pancakes on Sundays the way he used to, and even changed the porch light bulb that had been out 4 months. He smiled more at her, but never at me. Half of her belongings were already in our closet when I got home from a friend's house. Madison was never overtly cruel, not at first. She didn't yell, hit, or lock doors. Instead, she was more surgical and quiet. She had taken the left side where Mom's dresses used to hang. Dad said it was only temporary, until she found a space, but she never did. First it was the small things, like the lunch I packed going missing from the refrigerator, and then she would smile and ask, "Are you sure you packed one?" Nothing caught my attention. She might use my body wash without the cap on, which would make me feel insane. She would respond, "Maybe you're just forgetful, honey," when I questioned, always with that tone, like I was 5 and confused. Dad never questioned her. She cooked for him, ironed his shirts, laughed when he came home tired. If I ever said something felt off, he'd brush it away. "She's trying, Izzy," he'd say, "give her a chance." She had a key by her sophomore year, so I don't know when she started wearing my dad's old robe. But one day I saw it on her while she was watering the plants and almost screamed. When I told my dad that it wasn't right, that she shouldn't wear Mom's things, he told me that I was the one who was responsible for everything. The house, the car, even the small fireproof box that contained our birth certificates, her name, was added to all the bills. He said it was only a robe, but it wasn't. She began remodeling in waves, starting with the guest bathroom, followed by the hallway, a fancy mirror, and new towels. One by one, the family portraits were removed, and the final one was a framed picture of my mother and me from 3rd grade that was taken at the park. I asked Madison directly about it, which was a mistake. "Oh, that old thing," she answered. "I think the frame broke." We both smiled with grass in our hair, but one day it was gone. I looked everywhere, even the attic, but I couldn't find it. Or perhaps I stored it in one of the garage's crates. "I'll have a look." She didn't. My sleep became erratic. On certain evenings, I would awaken to footsteps that halted outside my door. The knob would occasionally spin slightly, as if someone were testing it. When I mentioned that, Dad brushed it aside. He answered, "It's an old house. There is a watercourse, but I caught her one night." Madison is still barefoot as she stands in the corridor, looking at my door, which is closed. I acted like I was asleep. From the hallway, the light beneath the door gleamed dimly. Her shadow lingered there for over 10 minutes before vanishing. She made me French toast the following morning. I began staying out late my junior year, anything to get out of the house, like work, friends, or the library. Madison started texting all the time. "You're where? I didn't know you were going to be late. Your father is concerned." My dad wasn't texting, though. She was the one. Around 1000 p.m. one evening, I returned home. Dad was on the couch, sleeping. The fragrance of bleach filled the house. Madison was in the kitchen, using deliberate, patient strokes to clean the counter late at night. She inquired. I needed to study. She grinned without turning to face me. "I'm concerned about you, you know. Girls alone are not safe in our world." After getting a drink of water, I made my way to my room. I slept with the chair pressed up against the door that night. College applications and a fleeting sense of independence arrived in senior year. Oregon State, which is 2 hours distant, accepted me. Not too far, but sufficient. Dad looked proud when I informed him. Madison simply smiled without saying anything. She cornered me in the corridor 2 weeks before to my graduation. She said, "You know, your father isn't getting any younger, so consider delaying." I gazed at her. "I've already said yes to the offer." "He's all right." Her head was cocked. "Families stay together. I'm just stating that." Graduation arrived. Dad snapped photos. All the meantime, Madison grinned. Something odd occurred that evening. The smoke alarm went off when I woke up. Hurried down the steps. The microwave was on fire. Madison was standing there with tears in her eyes. When she said, "I just wanted popcorn," the kitchen was in ruins. I never thought it was an accident, but insurance took care of it. The fire department didn't either. They stated I unplugged incorrectly, but I knew better. She was looking for compassion, attention, or an excuse to accuse me. Dad felt shook. She informed him that she would only be staying in the guest room for a short time. She gave me a big hug before I departed for college, too close, whispering, "I'll miss you, Isabel," she said. I didn't answer. College was great. I called home less and less for a while. "You're like the daughter I never had. He's resting. He's been feeling under the weather. He's sleeping a lot lately. By winter break, I'd had enough." My dad seemed quieter, exhausted, and then he stopped returning my calls completely, sending Emmy texts instead. I got home early and entered the house without warning. It was dark and quiet, and Dad was in bed, weak and pale. He smiled at me, but his words were slurred. I wanted to know what was wrong, and Madison said it was the flu. I found his medication bottles, incorrect amounts, and duplicates. I challenged her, saying, "You've been giving him more than he needs." She didn't dispute it, but her demeanor changed to one of cold clinicalness. "He doesn't want to wake up, Isabel. He's just tired," Isabel said. "He misses your mother." I stayed with him that night and called 911 the next morning. He was taken to the hospital, where he was over-medicated and dehydrated, but he lived. After that, he stayed with my aunt, far from her. Madison never returned my calls, and a month later, I just never wanted to help. But some things not even love can't be healed. "Tell your father I tried." Was gone, vanished, no trace, no goodbye. Just a scrawled letter on the kitchen counter. We never saw her again. Dad gradually recovered, but he was never the same. He was quiet and reserved. I'm not sure what she did. To him, not really. I'm not sure what she had planned, but occasionally I still see her silhouette at my door or hear the microwave beep in my nightmares. She never even raised her hand. I never wanted a second mother. Cancer gives you time to say goodbye, but not enough to stop it from tearing you apart when the end finally comes. I was 13 years old enough to understand what death meant, but too young to know how to carry it. Horror doesn't always look like blood. Sometimes it looks like a smile. We were close in the years before Mom got sick, but grief does strange things to people. So my dad, Richard Kimball, didn't talk much during that time. He handled it the way men of his generation did, working more, fixing things that weren't broken, and watching late-night television until he passed out on the recliner with a beer in hand. He pulled away, and I didn't know how to reach him. We lived in a modest 2-story house in a suburb outside of Denver. In a modest 2-story house with creaking stairs and an attic we never used. The world moved on, but our house remained trapped in that sick room stench of loss. It took him around a year to start dating again, and although I wasn't shocked, I pretended to be. Her name was Lydia, and it seemed that she was also a widow. The house grew teeth and bit into everything. Meals were eaten in silence, and holidays went by without celebration. My dad met her at a grief counseling group, and I say apparently because a lot of what she told us never added up, though I didn't realize that until much later. She was tall, with shoulder-length brown hair and sharp cheekbones, always well put together, and always smiling, even when it didn't make sense. Her warmth seemed overly prepared, like someone who had memorized the lines to be likable, but couldn't quite make them feel natural. He introduced us one night after dinner, with just the two of them standing awkwardly in the living room while I stared from the couch. She brought a pie cherry, store-bought, but she insisted it was homemade. My dad looked at me as if he expected me to embrace her, so I said, "Hi," and went upstairs. For a while, I told myself that I was just protecting my mom's memory, that no one would ever replace her. They were married after just 5 months, and when Lydia moved in the following week, everything really started to change. The first thing Lydia did was redecorate, and she removed all the pictures. But I knew deep down, even from the beginning, that it was more than that. There was something strange, something I couldn't explain, but it felt like a stone dropped in my stomach every time Lydia came around. I thought a fresh start would be good for everyone, she said one afternoon as she caught me staring at the blank walls of Mom, every single one. The wedding photos, the beach trip photos, even the small framed Polaroid of her holding me as a baby that used to sit on Dad's nightstand, all of them were gone, replaced with generic quotes like live, laugh, and love. The living room was completely transformed in a matter of days. I muttered, "You could have asked, sweetheart," she smiled, the words sticking to my lips, like syrup. Sometimes it's better to just do. She began cooking every night, despite my insistence that I preferred to prepare my own meals. At first, Dad thought it was sweet, but he saw it as her attempt to provide for us and his desire for us to be a family. I didn't express my true feelings, which were that this wasn't a family event, but rather a performance, and I wasn't purchasing a ticket. Unusual occurrences began to occur in the house. Initially minor ones, like my phone charger going missing and a bracelet my mother gave me going missing. The guest room upstairs, which had been my mom's crafting room, was always locked. Lydia had taken it over and claimed it was her meditation space. Dad didn't seem to mind, but I once caught her coming out of it at night, holding what appeared to be a folded piece of clothing wrapped in something else. I would hear Lydia on the phone in the kitchen late at night, whispering in a tone that wasn't meant for anyone else to hear. And when I asked her about it, she said she was just talking to her sister back east, but I never saw her call anyone during the day. Couldn't sleep, she continued, just organizing, and she startled and smiled too fast when she spotted me. I nodded, but I didn't think she was telling the truth. I began journaling at the 3-month mark, not because I wanted to, but because I needed anything to prevent myself from falling apart. On January 6th, she was standing in my room when I got out of the shower and said she was just checking the smoke detector. On January 10th, I discovered a torn-up picture of my mother in the trash. On January 12th, I heard a whisper in the guest room, like chanting, with the door locked. I didn't show my dad. I made a note of everything that felt strange. They would cuddle on the couch at night, while I sat in my room listening to music with headphones on, trying not to think about how alone I really was. Then came the sleepwalking, or at least that's what she called it. One night at around 3 in the morning, he was too far gone. Lydia had wrapped herself around his grief like ivy on a tree, and he didn't want to be uprooted again. When I woke up, she was standing in my bedroom doorway, standing still, not moving and not speaking. Her eyes were wide open, and her sheer nightgown hung off her like drapery in the wind, even though there was no breeze. "Lydia, what are you doing?" She didn't answer. "Oh my God," she remarked over toast. "I used to sleepwalk all the time as a girl." She blinked slowly, turned, and left when I went for my phone and switched on the flashlight. The following morning, she laughed it off. "Sounds embarrassing, doesn't it?" I refrained from laughing. In March, the house no longer felt like mine, so I began spending more time at my friend Ashley's house. Her parents were nice and didn't ask many questions, but Ashley sensed something wasn't right. "She's weird," she said bluntly one night, as we were lying on her bedroom floor doing our nails. "She's dangerous," I corrected. "How about telling your father?" "She's got him wrapped around her bony finger," I added, "since he's blind." Ashley hesitated, and I stared at her. "Do you ever believe she did something to her previous husband?" I nodded. The last straw was the week before school ended. I had a stomachache and came home early from class because I thought no one else was home. I went to the kitchen to get a Sprite and froze. The door to the guest room was open, wide open, and the first thing that hit me was the smell. The room was dark. The windows were shielded from the light by heavy curtains. The walls were covered in newspaper clippings, some of them old and yellowed, all about missing women, and in the middle of the space was a small table with candles, and a framed picture of my. There were strange jagged lines in black and red chalk, and a tiny wooden box rested in the corner. My stomach churned as I backed out slowly and bumped into Lydia, who was standing silently behind me. Mother was burned at the edges, and there was a glass jar full with hair, my mother's hair. "You shouldn't have seen that," she muttered, her eyes wide and unblinking, without a smile this time. "Where did you get that photo? Your mother talks to me, you know," she continued. "It was only dreams at first. She then told me what she wanted, so I ran without turning around. That evening, the police were contacted, and I waited with Ashley while they looked into it. By the time they got there, Lydia had disappeared, so there was no phone. Even the detectives were shocked by what they discovered in that guest room, a box in the corner that contained several bones that were later determined to be human, hair that belonged to several women, clippings on the wall that were connected to cold cases in 3 different states, a Missouri newspaper article that featured a picture of Lydia, but with a different name, and they have yet to locate her. I wanted to say, "I told you so," but my dad was broken. But all I could do was sit beside him as he cried, whispering over and over, "I didn't know. I had no idea." 4 years have passed since we sold the house, and I currently reside in Seattle. While attending college, I came from a broken home, but it was a shattered one, with glass sharp enough to leave you bleeding for the rest of your life. My mother died when I was 6, and the official cause was a car accident. I still check my closet every night before bed because sometimes I dream of her standing in the doorway smiling, waiting. My father was distant after that. He loved me in the sense that he provided for my food and shelter, but he never knew how to talk to me, especially when I cried. He worked long hours at the fabrication plant in South Carolina, and when he wasn't at work, he was asleep in his chair watching football. I didn't blame him, not really. Accident on a rain-slick road, but the truth whispered through family and neighbors was that she ran off that road on purpose. Evelyn Marks, a nurse at the hospital where my father was taken after a mild heart scare, had dark auburn hair and a voice that wrapped itself around you like a thick blanket. I was 11 years old when I first met her, and I remember thinking, she looked like someone from a perfume commercial, sophisticated, calm, and safe. I was lonely, though, which is why I noticed her so quickly when she entered our lives. 9 months later, they were married. I recall the first night she moved in, when she brought a silver-framed photo of a baby girl. She claimed it was her daughter, Gracie, who had passed away from complications following a seizure when she was only 3 years old. She was my entire world. Evelyn told me that evening as we unpacked her final belongings. You really make me think of her. For a while, Evelyn was all I needed. I felt seen, honored, and unique. Before school in the mornings, she braided my hair. She put little sticky notes with phrases like "my smart girl" or "smile today" beautiful in my lunchbox, and I did. I grinned, even when my father stopped giving me much attention and Evelyn took over most of my care. I continued to smile, even when my old toys were put away and replaced with dolls and clothing that Evelyn had chosen especially for me. I still grinned. Even when Mom started referring to me by Gracie rather than my given name, Lena, I grinned and said, "It just slips out. Habit, sweetie," but I was too scared to correct her. I started to feel dislocated around my 13th birthday. She held up a pale yellow sundress she had purchased for me and said, "Gracie would have loved this dress. You'll look just like her." I didn't wish to resemble Gracie. "Yellow is your color," I continued, "but I don't like it." She hesitated, then gave me a tight, overly bright smile. "But yellow is your fave hue." By the time I turned 15, everything had changed. She had complete control over my wardrobe, music choices, and hairstyle. Instead of yelling or threatening me, she chastised me softly but firmly. I didn't dispute. I wore the dress. She was always sweet, kind, and worried. She never let me go to sleepovers or use a phone, and even my laptop had parental locks on it. My father had passed away by then, having suffered a heart attack in his sleep only a year after they were married. She told my teachers at school that I had social delays, that I had trouble grounding my identity, and that I needed structure at home. They believed her, and why wouldn't they? The house changed after Evelyn sobbed at the funeral as if she had lost her soulmate, then moved on as if nothing had happened. She told the court that she wanted full guardianship over me, and since I had no other living family, it was granted. She replaced my bed with a daybed, painted my bedroom a pale pink, removed the posters I had managed to hide behind the door, and placed soft, plush toys on every surface. The last touch was a picture of Gracie on the knitstand. She brushed my hair and whispered, "You two look like twins," next to a framed picture of myself, smiling but a little out of focus. It's fate. I didn't comprehend how far she had gone until I was 17. I discovered an old photo album with images of Gracie in the attic one evening. But there was a problem. In each and every photograph, her face had been meticulously and deliberately wiped off, as if someone were attempting to replace and erase rather than brutally. There was a folder with papers and documents in the back of the album. I was drawn to one. Application for a name change. Harper, Lena Marie, Marks, Gracie Evelyn. I went cold. She didn't even deny it when I confronted her. She stroked my arm and murmured, "It's just a formality. We are merely formalizing what is already true." I told her that was not what I wanted. "I didn't make that choice," she said. That night I fled. I tried to, but she caught me in my pajamas, barefoot, halfway down the road, pulling me back by my arm. She murmured, "Don't be stupid, Gracie. Only the trauma is speaking." I let out a yell. I sobbed. I nibbled on her hand. She gave me a slap. She only ever hit me once, and that was the first time. Then she adopted a different approach. She informed doctors that I had manic episodes and put me on medicine. Regular school was no longer an option for me. She attempted to homeschool me, or primarily, she kept me sequestered in that pink room, wearing delicate cotton clothes, feeding me a rigid diet, and keeping a close eye on me. Sometimes I considered dying. I couldn't get away from her, not because I wanted to die. Then, however, something altered. I became ill, very ill. I spent a week in the hospital due to a viral infection. I became lighter. My ability to regulate my movements deteriorated. Evelyn was thrilled, too. At my bedside, she said, "I'll take care of you." The return of my baby. She had transformed my room by the time I got home. The bed was swapped out for something like a high-rail padded hospital cot. I'd lost my garments. Soft booties and pastel onesies took their place. The restroom was secured. She was determined to assist me in every way. Bathing, dressing, and feeding. As she spooned formula into my mouth, she said, "Just until you're better, let Mom assist you." I was no longer her daughter. I was her replacement, her project, Gracie. I heard her on the phone one morning. "The guardianship is still in effect. No, she lacks legal competence. The physician approved it." I realized then that she wouldn't let me go. Never. I needed assistance. I tried everything, including writing words and soap on the window and placing notes in the mailbox. One time, I even crawled to the back door and screamed until a neighbor emerged. Evelyn emerged pleasant and composed as usual. "I'm so sorry." She's easily confused. This morning, she experienced a seizure. Involvement of the frontal lobe. She makes odd statements. They took her word for it. They did it every time. The night she said, that was the tipping point. "We'll complete the name change tomorrow." The updated birth certificate was even given to me. "No," I muttered. As I slept in the crib, Mother brushed my hair and said, "Yes, Gracie, I'll do whatever it takes, forever. You are mine." I didn't get any sleep that night. I waited in the kitchen until I heard her. After that, I got out of the crib. Adrenaline is strong, although I wasn't very strong. I eventually found her laptop in her bedroom. I also took a message on tape. I said the truth, all of it, including the forced regression, the falsehoods, the abuse, and the falsified paperwork. I forwarded it to the email of a former instructor. I recalled. Then I fainted. It was bright when I woke. Doctors, police, and others were there to ask inquiries. I told them everything. At first, they didn't believe it all. Evelyn was quite convincing, but I was saved by the film, the journal I had stashed under the baby mattress, and the notes I had left. That afternoon, Evelyn was taken into custody on suspicion of identity theft, medical neglect, wrongful incarceration, and psychological abuse. 3 years have passed. I currently reside in North Carolina with a foster family. My name has been altered again. I attend treatment. I'm trying, but I have trouble sleeping. I still occasionally dream. Dreams in which Evelyn is carrying a bottle of wine at the foot of my bed, formula muttering, "Gracie, you're mine." However, after I wake up, I do not forget that I am not Gracie. I wasn't. I'm Lena Harper, and I made it through.